Tappe, I suppose just before the guys all start getting their questions in, probably be good to give the group just a bit of an update since when we last spoke, probably at the start of the season. We've had a couple of things that have been introduced. So we've got the independent match selection committee. You might want to speak to that. And then also a general update in terms of how things are progressing in terms of trends with the United Rugby Championship, potentially in comparison to other competitions, and how things are going in World Rugby.
Yeah, Adam, thank you so much. Good morning to everyone and good afternoon to the others who's in a different hemisphere at this stage. And yeah, it's nice to talk to you again, and thanks for the opportunity. And hopefully we can have some good discussion and some sensible answers to the questions that you guys will pose. Yeah, Adam, what has happened this year is we've moved on onto a independent selection committee, or panel, I should call them, to review referee performance, to identify key moments in the game where the referee didn't deliver a decision to expectation. It's twofold. It is to measure performance, to be accountable, so that the referee can be accountable for his work on the day over the 80 minutes, but then secondly also to support and help the referee to identify those issues, but also identify with his coach how to fix and how to get better. So our selection committee is a twofold. It's not only measurement, it's not only criticizing, it's not only finding errors and mistakes, but it's also a process where we would support the referee in the decisions that was good, and the processes that was good, and make sure that those are aligned to what the expectation is in URC, which then in the end is aligned to EPCR and to World Rugby. We would like to believe that our competition is very well aligned to the expectations of World Rugby and EPCR, because that's where our players are playing into EPCR, into a World Cup later in this year. And we cannot be different from that. So that is the function of the selection committee. And then the selectors also is responsible for the appointment of match officials, and looking at the block of appointments and best referees for the games that lies ahead. We've had a robust meeting of 2.5 hours to appoint the referees for the playoff fixtures. Who's the best fit for those? What fits within the expectations of URC from budget perspective, traveling perspective, player welfare, and the needs of the teams, and what is the best fit for the team. So that is what the selectors also do. They have the responsibility for those appointments as a group. The selectors are all 4 ex-international referees, with Nigel Owens from Wales, George Clancy from Ireland, myself as chairperson of that committee, Neil Patterson from Scotland, and then Stu Berry from South Africa, which also gives us a good connection towards World Rugby for him being responsible of the TMO development within the World Rugby environment. So we've come a long way with that. We give personal feedback after we've reviewed a game to each and every referee individually, and then we collate a performance a report on that referee's performance, which is generated online with the AMS system, about the decision making and the accuracy of that decision making over 80 minutes. So just in a big, that was a big change for us this year, and it's working well. It's well received by referees. It probably mirrors what's happening at World Rugby as well, where you have a selection committee that looks at performance and give feedback. And the independence of that selection group is hugely important, so that we are not looking with too much emotion and becoming emotional about performance and decisions. And that was the main reason for bringing that selectors group into place, that we can give a well-balanced review of referee performance. I'm happy to take questions now, Adam.
So yeah, guys. William Davies has his hand up first, and just remind everybody else, if you just use the raise hand functionality, and then turn your when you're speaking to Tappe. William, good morning.
Good morning, Adam. Good morning, Tappe. How are you? I'll tell you what I'm going to start with. It's one that comes up to me as a journalist from fans all the time, and it's also one that has been discussed a bit. Do you think TMOs get to see all the video I'll give you an example. James Lowe scored a try for Ireland against France. Eventually, just after the try was awarded, suddenly another bit of video is discovered that shows his foot's clearly in touch. These things happen, but how much control do TMOs have on the video that they're actually accessing? And is there a potential for any home country, I'm going to say it, to pull their, do a little bit of helping of their own team?
Yeah, William, that is a very good question. And thank you for asking that question. That is probably one of the areas that is taking a lot of our energy and focus at the moment as to how do we support and help TMOs for many reasons. I can just quickly share in background. The TMO started in 2000. The first TMO was back in 1996. 95 in a club game in South Africa, there was an experiment, but in the top games, international games, it started in 2000, and forever the TMO has been dependent on the broadcaster for the technology that is used. It started off with one screen with replays. Then we added another screen. The broadcaster supplied us with another screen with a 7-second delay. You missed on the first occasion, 7-second delay. And in 23 years, that was basically the investment into TMO. And we've reached the point now that we are seriously considering and looking into the technology that's available in the market to support that role, so that we are not interfering, first of all, with the broadcast and their primary role to deliver a broadcast, and the TMO looking for replays while the producer and the broadcasters has got another priority to show highlights of how the try was scored. And there's still a process of replaying and rewinding to find the right clip and the right camera angle. So it's quite a complex process at this stage, where we as TMOs and as match referees are very much reliant on what the broadcasters can give us in the shortest time possible. So we are exploring, and in South Africa, they've applied some technology to find what we call the money shot, the best camera angle to make informed decision. Some of the internationals, and I think that international of Ireland and France that you've referred to, I think it's the best part of 32, 36 camera angles that's being used, not only for the game, but also for interviews and stuff. But it's a huge production where we have to find where our roles sit. So there's a lot of work going on. Your question about William is about can unions influence it? I won't say unions. I would just say broadcasters control what they show to the TMO at the moment and what appears on screen. Up north, we have the TMO in the broadcast van, so he has access to the camera angles and he can request that a replay being shown of a specific angle. But it's not ideal. The system that's now on test in South Africa is where there's an assistant to the TMO that looks independently to those replays, do not interfere with a VTR operator, the guy that's responsible for showing replays in the broadcast van, to take that off his hand and then request. Camera 7 is the angle we would like to show to the referee that we believe is the best camera angle for the shot. And then when the broadcaster has got that in line, play it back to the referee on the big screen. Does that open up for manipulation? Yes, it does. Is it happening? I would refrain from saying it is happening deliberately. I would refrain from saying that broadcasters aren't honest in what they show. It's a sensitive matter that we need to find the best solution, so that those perceptions or those instances are taken out of the equation, so that we can then have a fully independent process of TMO review, but still reliant on the footage that broadcasters provide to us for that role. And that's the role that Stuart Berry is now looking into in depth and pulling apart for quite a couple of months. He's been busy with it in build-up to World Cup, and to see what the options are to overcome those difficulties and to overcome it with the best technology available.
Just rolling on it as well with TMOs. If you look at cricket, you have two standing umpires and there's a guy in the box, and then the next test match, the guy in the box is a standing umpire and one of the standing umpires has gone up to the box. Would you like to see a system where people that are refereeing, say they referee Ireland-Wales on one Saturday, and then the following Saturday, they become the TMO, and the TMO from the Ireland-Wales game is actually on the field? Or do that, because the TMOs don't seem to referee at the same level, or we don't see them refereeing actual games or games of that level.
Yeah, William, quite a valid question. You will probably be aware that in URC, we have at times our match officials in the TMO box. I will say this to you, that the TMO requires a different skill set from referee. It's a skill set of interpreting what you see on a screen, interpret what you see, and then relay it to a decision process where in the referee environment is what the referee experience on the field with the crowd, with the pressure, understanding the environment better, which is totally different skill sets. I can share with you, and I was one of them, and I'm not using me as an example, but some referees don't like it to be TMO because they feel they don't have the skill set for that. So we're trying to find the people with the right skill sets and equip them with the right skill sets and develop their skill sets specifically for TMO, because it's an absolutely different skill set from refereeing. But the knowledge of the game and the knowledge of decision making is hugely important and overlaps in that role. But will it be ideal to have a referee that has refereed the previous week in the TMO box next week? I don't think it will be ideal. At the top end of the game, there's a lot of decisions that is looked at and questioned, and if do we want to put that referee again with the same teams in the same environment with a lot of questions from the previous weekend? Is it ideal? Is it fair to the teams? Is it fair to the individual? We have to look at all of those. But my bigger answer will be, we need to find the right people with the right skill set for the TMO role, and it's different skill sets from what referees have.
Final one from me. You're in charge of the referees overall. Do you think the quality of refereeing in the URC is getting better, and particularly in regards to consistency of decision making between the way that one referee interprets something and another referee? Are you getting them closer, that the interpretations are within a say a 5% margin either way or something like that? Is that how you operate?
Yeah, William, that's the aim. If you talk to coaches, that's the big word is consistency. And coaches understand errors and human error, and didn't see or not in a position to see, or so they understand that inconsistency is a big issue for them, and one of our key drivers is to consistency. And we've come a long way. Over the last two tournaments or competitions. The first one was difficult with COVID and all the disruptions and changes. This year was much more fluent to achieve that. We've had regular meetings after round 6, after round 12, and now after round 18. This afternoon, I'm having a meeting with the coaches to discuss key areas of consistency before we go into quarterfinals, and then tomorrow I'm discussing with the referees as well. So we constantly have meetings for that, and we've made good progress. The year one was difficult between North and South. There was perceptions about difference of interpretation and difference of application. I think this year, with the South African teams also playing into in EPCR, has exposed them to French and English referees more specific. They understand the hemisphere differences aren't that big as they thought or think it would be. That has been overcome, so there's more consistency around that. I haven't really heard any noise from coaches about, the Northern Hemisphere is a different interpretation than Southern. We've breached that now. And the teams being more exposed, and the South African teams in particular, to EPCR and French and English referees and top international referees from those competitions as well, has helped a lot. And then in the collaboration of the coaches to give feedback about referee performances is hugely important for us to understand their expectation and have discussions with them to align it with the expectations of URC, World Rugby and EPCR competitions to make sure that there's a good understanding of expectations. And as far as consistency goes, we've probably improved by a big margin. Part of that improvement is also experience. The experienced referees are well received within the competition, and we're trying to maintain our group, to give them experience and as much exposure so that we can get to a group of elite referees that boast a lot of experience and have a lot of experience, because that helps with consistency as well. So we are getting there. We're moving in the right direction. We probably improved by about 15 to 20% on our consistency and understanding of the expectations of coaches and different hemispheres as well.
Tappe, thank you for your time and your candid answers. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, William.
William.
Appreciate your questions.
I see Ken Borland is the next person using the raise hand function. So, and then Hugh Godwin after that. So anybody else who wants to get their questions into Tappe, if you just use the raise hand function, I'll call you out as soon as I can. Ken, over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, Tappe. Tappe, at the moment in URC, there seems to be a bit of a dearth of South African referees involved. It's much more Northern Hemisphere guys on the panel. How does that change? What plans are in place for more South African referees to be involved in URC?
Yeah, Ken, good morning to you as well, and thank you for your question. Very valid question. We have the South African teams and South Africa not as a full partner in URC. We are challenged with sharing the cost of match officials and appointments with South Africa around that. That will improve once South Africa becomes a full partner, and there is a bit of a limit on the appointment of South African match officials into Europe because of the huge cost to let them travel across hemisphere. What we try to do is give the South Africans a fair share of URC appointments, and in the bigger picture, the South African referees is referee 28 appointments to date, not finished yet. Jaco Peyper has got another appointment as a quarterfinal, into the quarterfinal this weekend. So we're trying to find a good balance that works for South Africa financially and that works for URC in giving them fair exposure and for their development into this competition as well. They are not excluded from the competition. The priority is to appoint them to the local derbies in South Africa, and there's quite a few of those, and find a good balance in it. And then we also try then to align appointments for them in the Northern Hemisphere with appointments into Six Nations and under 26 nations when they travel up north with IRB business. We look into those appointments and then also use those opportunities to appoint them to suitable games that happens in and around that time of their international appointments. So that helps a lot as well. And that's where we are with the South African referees at the moment. We're working very hard with the South African referee management, Bank Shantolo and Mark Lawrence, constantly in discussion with them to find the best opportunities and make the opportunities work with their travel itineraries as well. So Ken, that will improve quite dramatically when South Africa becomes a full shareholder into URC and EPCR. That answer your question, Ken?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks very much, Tappe. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken. Hugh Godwin next, followed by Stephen and then Keith.
Hi, Tappe. How are you?
All good, mate. Thank you so much.
Long time no speak. Long time no speak. Really, just a kind of general question that's springing out of what you've already said. The supporters, journalists, everybody else is constantly pleading for consistency. I don't know how close we'll ever get to 100% consistency while there's human beings involved. But I wonder, how often would you consult with other referee managers, people like Tony Spreadbury, Paul Hull in the Premiership in England, etc., someone in Super Rugby, Joel at World Rugby? Is there a kind of referee manager consultation between you guys to try and find out what's happening in different competitions at different times?
Yeah, Hugh, I'm actually pleased you asked that question. We've now moved into a era where we have monthly meetings between all the professional competitions around the world as managers of those competitions, referee managers of those competitions, which includes EPCR, URC, Top 14 in France, the Premiership in England, and even Super Rugby Pacific, Super Rugby Australia. And we meet on a monthly basis, and that initiative is part of World Rugby through Phil Davies, who's created that platform where we consult with one another about our competitions, about trends in the game, about what's happening in our environments, about what's happening in our teams, in our decision making, and also to bring it closer together on interpretation, application of law, understanding of expectations. So we've made huge strides with that, and I must say this, that Martin and I played a huge role to give URC a foot in the door with World Rugby, and World Rugby accepting and saying, look, we need to create this. And I'm really pleased that we've had some very useful meetings, and we're meeting on a monthly basis. With EPCR, which is closer by, there's more often contact with Tony Spreadbury. We attend the meetings that we set up with our match officials. I attend the EPCR workshop sessions with TMOs and with referees, make sure that what we do in our workshop sessions and things is aligned to EPCR. So more often with Tony Spreadbury, but worldwide, yes, we are collaborating with one another to find solutions for difficulties that we have. And the difficulties isn't that much different, I must say, but share our knowledge, share our solutions, and share ideas about how to address. So yeah, it is a collaboration worldwide.
And when we hear coaches quite often still saying, oh, we're going to analyze the referee before a particular match, we know that this referee tends to go for, I don't know, a cleaner release at the breakdown, whatever it might be. We hear this constantly from coaches. Do you think that's just coach speak, just making excuses, or is there a real tendency for one referee to prefer to referee? They still do have idiosyncrasies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And of course, coaches are very aware of that. They want to understand how the referee will deal with certain areas of the game. And we try to, in our delivery, in our workshops, to get it aligned, and everybody, so if that's the pictures, then the expectation is that the focus should be on this and this, what's wrong in the picture. But there are still differences. We're individuals that look at the same picture and see different things in those pictures. We try to limit that as much as we can. So we talk about get what matters, get what's important, get the critical feel rather than find what's wrong. So we try to get the referees to focus on the right things. But coaches acknowledge and know that different referees will look at the same thing and see some things differently, and it's more important. If you ask a coach on attack, what's important in this tackle picture from an attacking point of view, the tackler must get out of the way, and we want a free runway to clear the ball. If you look at the same picture, you ask the team that's defending, the coach look at something totally different, but we're looking at the same picture. And what's important in that picture differs for them. But yes, they do study the referees, and they do ask questions about the referees to get clarity on small things that they may think might be different, but can make a difference on the day of the decision making. They raise awareness of it, and coaches accept that there will be a difference in what the referee look at, but their expectation is it shouldn't be big differences. And studying the referee, they just want to make sure about those areas that they do perceive a difference from their perspective, and to get clarity on it. And what we do now is this interaction before games, where we give coaches an opportunity to ask the referee, we've seen you in this and this, here's a couple of clips, we would like you just to give us clarity on how do you see that, so they have confidence into play and understand what they perceive as a difference, what they've picked up as a team in the referee's interpretation and application.
And then just thirdly from me, only springing off an earlier question on this call, it may be a question for World Rugby. Is your understanding that for the Rugby World Cup in September, October, will the broadcasters will the host broadcaster be English speaking? Because I think one thing we see a lot with coverage of French matches on TV, or French matches played in France, is that the broadcaster sitting in the truck, the match director is French. And there's sometimes a language barrier there in queuing up all the replays. You know, that was the question about getting all the replays queued up. We had a match in France at the weekend that Jaco was refereeing, and it seemed to take ages to get to the right angle.
Yeah.
So do you know what's happening for the World Cup on that?
Yeah, I've got no idea what's happening at the World Cup. I know they're working very hard on how the TMO process is going to be and how the reviews is going to be managed through a bunker or for whatever system they're putting on. They're working hard at it, but I've got no idea who will be the broadcasters, who will be the cameramen, who will be the producers. I've got no idea. It doesn't fall within my remit, and I would just hope that we find a system that brings credibility to that process. Thank you so much, Hugh.
Thanks, Hugh. Stephen Nell, followed by Keith.
Thanks very much, Adam. Hello, Tappe.
Hi, how are you, Stephen?
Good, thanks, man. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
Tappe, I just want to pick up on something you said about TMO and it being a different skill set to the referee. Is the ideal profile of a TMO an ex-referee, experienced former referee, would you say, or what is the ideal sort of profile of a TMO? Who would qualify best?
Stephen, thank you. Difficult question. Yeah, the knowledge of the game, the knowledge of decision making and refereeing plays a huge part of that, and it's always a big plus. I'll probably compare it to what we see nowadays with we see more and more professional referee players that becomes referees. We've seen the likes of Glenn Jackson, Nick Berry, and some others that's moving into refereeing, and that game knowledge as a background as a player at the high performance instincts serves them very well. Carl Dixon is a name that comes to mind as well. Andy Bryce has played international rugby for Belgium and stuff, and that game knowledge is very useful within the refereeing environment. The same applies to the TMO environment. A background of refereeing, understanding of the laws, studying the laws in the environment of decision making and processes of refereeing the game is hugely important as a base layer for a TMO. Does it have to be an ex-international referee? No, it doesn't have to be ex-international referee. What skill sets do we require? I think, and in your environment, Human Crick will probably be a good TMO as an analyst because he's involved in the high performance environment. I don't think Human has refereed a game in his life, but I tell you what, when he gives me feedback, and a lot of analysts, the Bulls analysts and the analysts from Munster and all of them, when they give me feedback, these guys are right spot on. They know the game, they understand the game, they understand what they're looking at on a monitor, they ask questions about it, they draw arrows and lines, and these analysts are actually bloody good. And those are the skill sets that's also required for TMO. Must it be is it a must-have to have an ex-international referee? No, it's not. What skill sets is required? Probably the same skill sets that analysts are using to look at games to give their coaches and players feedback about the accuracy of their execution. They're pretty spot on with the accuracy of the referee's execution. So it doesn't have to be an ex-referee, but that knowledge and background will surely help a lot. Does that answer your question, Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Tappe. I just want to make sure, Human Crick, you said.
Yeah, isn't he an analyst there with
Yeah, he's an analyst, but I just wanted to make sure I got the name right, that I'm understanding it 100%. It's a very interesting point.
I've used him as an example because I get a lot of feedback. The clubs are buying in giving feedback, and that comes from them as a coaching and management team, and the analysts are responsible for finding the detail about they want to ask questions about, and how accurate these guys are is amazing. To help us as referees also to understand what their expectation is, and I've thought about the skill sets of TMOs a lot. We need to find the right people, and analyst shows a lot of the skill sets that's required for accuracy in decision making from a monitor, looking at a monitor and looking at replays. They are very sharp. And I think they are doing it for many years, so they're experienced in it as well. So yeah, those are part of the skill sets. We try to teach that to referees that retire and make themselves available as TMOs. We have a lot of work sessions. We've had work sessions last week and Tuesday. Every last Tuesday of the week, we've got TMO workshops for URC match officials and TMOs to review certain difficult TMO decisions and to align ourselves to what the focus should be. How do we deal with it? How do we challenge the facts? How we get to the right outcome? So yeah, it helps to be a test international referee, but it doesn't have to be one.
It's interesting. You know, one of the reasons I'm also talking about the profile is, you know, there's also the practice just at a more local level to use current referees as TMOs, which I have my reservations over. I did sort of get the impression earlier that you're also not wild about that idea, is to actually use current refs as TMOs.
Yeah, Stephen. Yeah, if I gave you that impression that I'm not eager to explore that, I am eager to explore that. We need to find our best decision makers and put them in the positions where crucial and critical decisions are being made. And the TMO is one of those positions. And if we expose our match officials into that role, and they show that they have the qualities and they are successful in that role, we must apply them, because we have to find the best people for the role on the day. And if that means we have to dig into our elite panel to put it, that's why I've quite a couple of occasions we've appointed, the selectors group have appointed referees into the TMO environment. We also need to take in consideration what the referees are comfortable with. I will not put a referee into the TMO box if they're not comfortable and eager to explore that. It's unfair unto them. They're referees first. We're trying to build into URC from a cost perspective, traveling to South Africa and back and up north. If we can do double ups, that will help us a lot in that as well. And if our referees are the best decision makers, can we then develop the skill sets for them to also be the best decision makers in the box? We are exploring that. I'm not so sure how far World Rugby is going down the route to explore that. But it will be an interesting discussion to have with Stuart Berry as well. But we, as URC, we are exploring that to see where it goes.
Thanks, Tappe.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Stephen. Over to Keith.
Hi, Tappe. I think you've just answered half a question I had for you. So I'll stick with the reverse of actually Ken's question earlier about whether you were using the opportunity to bring referee teams in South Africa and developing them in different roles. Do you think that's helping the development when you look around the groups of appointments that you've got with the sort of new batch of referees coming in, with Gianluca, Federico in Italy, Holly and Sam kind of developing nicely at URC level? Is that helpful to have those double up weekends in South Africa to help that development?
Yeah, Keith, a very valid question. Thank you so much for that, and thanks also for joining. Good to see you. Yeah, Keith, it helps a lot for the development to expose referees into different environments. Our timing to when do we expose referees and when do we take referees to the environment to perform their duties as TMO or as referee. It helps a lot with the growth of our referees to understand the role of the TMO and the difficulties they have to deal with. So they have a better understanding when they stand on the pitch and wait for the TMO replays and to be shown. It creates an opportunity to explore what is best fit for that individual as well. Not all referees in URC or in EPCR is going to become tier 1 test referees at World Cups. All of them has got those aspirations. So we would explore both ends, and the development of that. It helps a lot if they can do that dual role. I can take an example, and Ben Whitehouse, who is now focusing probably more focused to develop into a TMO for the longer term of his career, but he's still very valuable and referees quite well in URC, so he continues with that. So he's doing that dual role, gets a lot of appointments. Been to the World Cup in New Zealand, Last year, he's been involved as a TMO in Six Nations. He's been involved in TMO in the TikTok Six Nations over the last weekend that we watched on Saturday with England and France playing each other at Twickenham. So that's one example which probably shows that we are keen to explore a dual role and then to find what is best fit for that individual. And if the individual is not progressing into a top international referee, the opportunity, we don't waste the opportunity to not consider for another role, either as an AR full-time or as a TMO. So Ben Whitehurst is a good example of that. That's doing both very well at the moment.
And are you seeing the next batch of your URC referees coming through nicely? Is there enough coming through from the countries to feed your 2026 panel?
Yeah, we are quite pleased that we are sitting well with our development group of referees. We had the opportunity to introduce 3 new referees into our environment with appointments: Federico Vedavelli and Morne Ferreira and Owen Cross from Ireland. These guys has actually done well. We're pretty pleased where they are. The selectors will have a meeting to make a decision whether they go onto the elite panel and where they sit in their development. Referees like Gianluca, AJ Jacobs from South Africa, that's also new into our competition. We're pretty excited where they sit and where they are and how they're developing. We are looking at Adam Jones from Wales. So there's a lot of names that we sit and my challenge is to get these guys a lot of exposure and experience. We can only make an informed decision if we've given these guys a fair opportunity. What is a fair opportunity? I would like these guys to get to 20-25 games before we make a decision whether they're going to continue on that panel, because we have to give them a fair go over 2 or 3 seasons and see how they develop, and not based on 1 or 2 decisions or games that it didn't go so well to take them off. Some people develop a bit slower and later than others. But we are very excited with the group of referees that we had, and looking forward to carry them through over the 4-year cycle into the next World Cup after this one, and get their experience levels to a very high level, and to make informed decisions about what their career is going to look like on the longer term.
And just one final one, just to follow on that, you mentioned that the World Rugby were looking at the TMO bunker system for World Cup. Are you looking at that with Stuart for URC for potentially next season, or is that too far away given the technology challenges that you talked about earlier?
To be honest with you, Keith, we're talking about it. We had a big meeting last week and Thursday looking into the technology to accommodate that. How's it going to work with all the live streaming and things that's available all across the world now? Do we have to have everybody in the same venue with the technology available to stream it to other people with the latency and things available and many milliseconds of delays? It opens a new world to us. So we're exploring that all the time. Will the bunker be the final answer? I'm not so sure. With the technology available, it can probably go wider than only 3 or 4 people sitting in a bunker and doing all the reviews. It looks like technology is giving us the opportunity that everybody doesn't have to be in the same room to get to a decision and looking at the same stuff at the same time. So quite excited about the bunker, and I would like to see and understand what comes from Junior World Cup, where I understand that bunker is going to be put in place. I'm hugely excited about what that offers, and I'm hugely excited to learn from it, and then also to see how it fits with what the technology. Today's technology is old news tomorrow. It's old technology tomorrow. And to see what the technology offers to us and where we can go in URC with a bunker setup, but not necessarily in the same room. So we are a very long way down the line where we're exploring that, Keith, without trying to give too much away. But URC will be very interested in a bunker setup as it sits at the moment, and with the technology available, whether it can happen next season will be a challenge, but not a challenge that we're not prepared to give it our best shot.
Thanks, Tappe.
Thanks, Keith.
Ashfaq?
Thank you, Adam. Hi, Tappe. Hope you're well.
Thanks, Ashfaq. I am at the moment, depending on your questions.
Yes, I hope it won't rattle a bit too much because it's a bit broader than the URC. But you know, this age-old thing about hometown decisions. I heard you earlier saying that you think maybe in the URC you guys have got away from that. But you know, often coaches, I know it's mainly probably when the team lose that they will say, oh, if like a South African team, if they got a bad decision up north, they'll say that was in South Africa, it may have gone the other way, and vice versa. Can we ever get past that in reality? Can it be a real situation of neutrality and a same kind of standards and interpretations, or is that just a sort of unicorn that we're chasing?
Ashfaq, I think as human beings, you will never get away from that because there will always be personal opinions about situations, and we can't control personal opinions about things. Most of the time, it's a personal opinion or a perception. We are working very hard and try to equip our specifically ARs, assistant referees at the moment, which are local appointments, which we try to be club neutral, but it's not always. We can't do country neutral as it stands at the moment. We are investigating how we can make that better. But as I said, it's about personal opinion about a situation, and a lot of times the perception that's being formed around the individual that they look at, and the decision that's been looked at, and people form their perceptions. Oh yeah, he's from Boland, so that's why he will favor a Stormers decision because it's their neighbor. So people form their own perceptions and opinions about it that we can't control. What we can control is how we perform on the day, and the fairness of our decision making and our process. And as long as we're transparent about our fairness and what we want to achieve in our, whether it's a TMO process, whether it's an AR call, whether it's a referee decision on the pitch, what's important for us is to put forward the fairness of the decision and the process. Controlling those perceptions and those opinions, Ashfaq, you're probably right. We will probably never achieve that, but we can build credibility in how we make our decisions and be transparent about our process of decision making as well.
And just one more from me, Tappe. In that regard, how far are we away from getting a captain's or coach's challenge in the URC? I know it's been trialed at Varsity Cup and perhaps a few other levels, but yeah, for the URC, can that happen in future?
Never say never, but for the immediate future, no. I think what's important, if we go down a route, we need to do proper research before putting that into a professional environment. We need to get as close to a professional environment to put it to the test, because professional players challenge you differently. And I'm not saying that Varsity Cup players aren't professional; they're skillful, and it is a wonderful competition to probably do some certain trials and stuff. But in all honesty, if you get to the top international players and top international captains, and we know the strong characters and names. If you put those people on the pitch, they challenge the referee differently. So a captain's referral in the professional environment will look different from what it is in a Varsity Cup environment, just because of the experience of those captains. They will challenge you differently. And I don't need to put names out there of captains and how they challenge referees differently. I always used to say, what is the difference if you stand in a game and you've got individuals playing against one another to the likes of a Bakkies Botha and a line out against, let's say, Kobus Wiese. Let's use two South African names, and the two of them is against one another, and you as a referee say, open the line out. Both of them do not move an inch. They look at you and say, make me. Without saying anything, you just realize, I'll have to make them move. And that is just an example that I use, how professional players will challenge you differently. So if we get to a captain's challenge, we need to research that properly in as close to a professional environment as we can, and to see how we can make that work. And with the technology available, we also need to take care that the captain's challenge on the field is not becoming a coach's challenge from the bench, relayed through a physiotherapist or a water carrier or a doctor or a team doctor or someone to the captain, that it actually becomes a replay that's been looked at on a laptop. It's now being relayed to the captain on the field. So there's a lot of things to consider for that. Will it happen in URC in the near future? At the moment, no. Can we explore with it? We will need to have discussions with clubs and get buy-in. And I'm not so sure that that will happen in the near future.
So just as a bit of context on that, we did trial the Captain's Challenge in the Rainbow Cup in 2021. And I think the direct feedback from that from broadcasters and fans was that it was slowing the game down. So I think at the moment you'll see a lot of our activities are based at speeding the game up. So obviously the water breaks that were brought in at the start of the season, that they're now gone. The shot clock has been introduced. And as Tappe has spoken quite a lot about the TMO, that's the other area where we're trying to speed the game up whilst also getting the right decisions. So I think actually the other side of it is that if we can get this TMO process right with the technology that's being looked at from a league point of view, I think a Captain's Challenge actually might even become redundant. But I think if we speed the game up, I think that's probably, if we get all those boxes ticked, then that maybe becomes a conversation again. But just wanted to provide a bit of context that we did trial it for the Rainbow Cup. And it certainly got mixed reviews from our stakeholders and even the clubs themselves. So,
thanks, Adam. I hear you, and thank you, Tappe, for your answer. Just that, it's such a high stakes game, and decisions have consequences. And we saw, I would imagine that many Ulster fans wouldn't have minded if there was a Captain Challenge against the Stormers last season. So that kind of situation crops up. So, if there was an option, it could have been a very different outcome. So yeah, that's just why I thought it's maybe something worth exploring.
Oh, it's a good conversation piece. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, good point, Ashfaq. Good point raised there. But yeah, it's not something that we're negative about, but we can, with more research and more information, see how we can make it work a bit better than it was in the Rainbow Cup. So yeah, it's a lot of agendas we need to look at that needs to be served. Volume play time and length of game available for broadcasters to broadcast internationally and stuff and things. There's a lot of things that has an impact if the game becomes longer, not so much playing time, but to deliver the game. We've had some games that went like 2 hours 5, 2 hours 7 minutes, which is unacceptable because the broadcast time doesn't allow for that. And if we put the more challenges and the more reviews and things we put in, the longer the game gets to be completed. So we're aiming for an hour 55, hour 52. We brought that down quite a lot with speeding up the game, with a shot clock, with the line-out huddles and stuff and things. There was a dramatic improvement in how long it takes to deliver a game of 80 minutes, going past 2 hours 5, 2 hours 7 minutes. So that plays a big role as well. But thank you for your question. It's a very interesting question, and something that we will keep our finger on the pulse all the time.
Thank you, Tappe.
Ken, did you have a follow-up? Ken Borland, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Adam. Tappe, you spoke earlier about how because we are human beings, two referees will look at the same picture and see two different things. You sit in on those World Rugby meetings. Are there any moves? Is there any discussion around simplifying the laws just to make that a bit easier for the referees?
Yeah, Ken, thank you for the question. And there's others on this call as well that's very aware of what's happening. Yes, it is. Of course it is. And just to give you how serious IRB is about it, IRB has appointed somebody that takes responsibility for the laws, the law book, clarifications, guidelines to laws, and specifically. And it is new. It's a new role within World Rugby that Keith has been occupying, and I don't think Keith mind if I say his name. That's how serious World Rugby is about this, to get it aligned, to get it better. At the moment, we've got almost about 92 clarifications. That's part of the law that explains certain laws a bit better to give clarity where designated members has made a decision and stuff. So yes, it is a big priority with World Rugby, to such an extent that they've appointed somebody to own that process of doing it. I know Keith is doing it in collaboration with all the competitions. He involves all of us. We get regular emails asking questions. We have the freedom to send in questions and ask for clarifications, and we are getting answers back on the same day, and if not the same day, then it's early the next morning, about difficulties of laws and interpretation application. So yes, in World Rugby, it is a very high priority to get that aligned and to simplify it so that it is easy to follow, easy to understand for all our stakeholders, not only for match officials and their roles and players to play, but for those watching the game as well. And I know Keith Lewis is doing a great job. He's working very hard to get all of those aligned. And sooner than later, we will probably see some big changes that will happen around that. Does that answer your question, Ken?
Thanks, Tappe. Spot on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great stuff. Okay, guys. If anybody has any final questions, now's your opportunities. We're just coming up on time. But I think everyone has put in their questions. Tappe, thank you for your detailed responses and the time that you give up in your busy schedule to speak to the guys on what we try and make sure is a regular basis. And I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add before you finish up, or.
Yeah, guys, it's exciting times for us as match officials as well. We're part of the game and we want to be part of the game. Collaboration with coaches and clubs is a huge priority for us in URC. Better understanding each other's expectations, talk to each other all the time, work with each other to make the game better. We're all working on the same product, and we're getting to a point where we own the product, not separately, but we can't work in individual silos. That's where we're going, guys, and that's the message. We've done well this year, where the focus was about collaboration and accountability towards those clubs and teams that the referees, they answer back to them. So I'm quite excited where this is going to go. We're working as competitions together to make it better. So I'm really excited for the future, and give you guys the confidence that we recognize that it's a big challenge, but we're not backing off from the challenge. We're constantly working very hard to make it better, to get consistency and deliver a product that everybody can enjoy.
Great stuff. Thank you, Tappe. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. We'll have the recording available if anybody needs it. Do drop a line to either Aoife or myself, and we'll pass it on to you. And otherwise, thank you again for everyone giving up their time to attend. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Tappe.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.